When I was first in Adelaide as a youth pastor, we took our kids down to a camp. There was a campsite down in O'Sullivan's Beach. It was a government-owned site. I don't know if it's still there, but you sort of walk out in the balcony. You had beautiful views of the oil refinery. It was a difficult weekend. Like, it was controlled by raging hormones and punctuated with plentiful bodily functions. It was just one of those really difficult bunch of high schoolers, and they just weren't listening, and they didn't cooperate, and they fidgeted, and they flatulated. They just, it was a real struggle. Somehow we got through to Saturday night, and somehow we got everybody in their cabins, and I'm sort of the last person left up, just wandering around the cabins, just trying to make sure that everyone was at least asleep or pretending to be. And it really had been a struggle. And I got to a point, it was about 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'm thinking, I think they've finally settled down for the night. And I just sat down in the moonlight down there at O'Sullivan's Beach, and I just sort of sat down outside the cabins and just thought about working with young people, and I was pretty discouraged. We'd put so much effort into this, and it was just way too much hard work. And I thought, I've lost it. When I was younger, I used to be able to connect with teenagers. I thought, my goodness, I've been a youth pastor for 4 years. I was 28 years old. I was getting old. I was twice the age of the kids that were on the camp. You know that feeling? And I thought, I just don't connect with that generation anymore. And I thought, maybe God is calling me to something different. And so I prayed, dear God, please call me to something different. But that night, God wanted to show me something. He wasn't ready for me to step aside from working with teenagers and go into a lower stress position, like being an air traffic controller. He wasn't ready for me to sit in my rocking chair and wrap my blanket around me and say, I'm too old to work with school kids. Because that night, God showed me that it wasn't that the gap between me and the teenagers was too big. That night, God showed me that the gap between me and him was too big. That somehow, I just saw myself as a youth worker, running a youth club, running a few programs, entertaining a few dozen high schoolers, trying to give them something better in their life. And I saw myself as just some insignificant worker working with a handful of kids that would never make any difference in the world. And that night, God lifted my vision to say, no, that is not what I've designed you for. You are not there, Tim, just to be some small-time youth worker, just having insignificant programs and a small effect with a handful of kids. And if you're working with young people, if you're in a primary school, if you're in a high school, if you're in an area school, you are not babysitting some young people until one day a real pastor will come along and do real ministry with them when they become real people. Right now, you've been called to work alongside people at their most significant time of growth and change in their life. You get called to work alongside people when they are making decisions which are going to affect their entire adult life. You get to work with young people who are the hope and the future of this nation and this world. And you get to invest into them and bring about a generational change that you and I can really only dream about at this stage. I don't know what school you're involved with. I don't know what age group you're working with. But if you're a CPS worker, you are not some small-time, insignificant person just working with a handful of kids. God has called you to be a generation changer.